Hey everybody, welcome back. Today we're doing something I don't do very often, thankfully, and that is troubleshoot an issue with one of the UrS4s, C4 Audi S4. If you follow this channel and see my prior videos, you'll know that we have 3 of these cars in the family, and for the most part, they are about as bulletproof as you get in terms of a German car. And even given their age, I mean, it's 2025 right now. Our newest example was a 1994. And all of these cars, start on the button and run and drive. They don't leak typically. We don't really have issues with these. It's, for the most part, it is drive them, use them, treat them nicely. And obviously do your maintenance on schedule, etc. But I don't typically have problems with these cars, and part of that is I'm not really pushing the envelope. I'm not trying to get 700 plus horsepower out of this. The quickest car in the garage is the red car here, and that is the full RS2 spec build that I did back in 2000 or 2001. I can't even remember what year it was now, but it's been on here for a long time. So it's turbocharger, manifold, mass airflow injectors, fuel pressure regulator, RS2 cam, exhaust cam I should say, the LS ignition coil conversion from EFI, the catch can setup from 034. I always say O. But yeah, I mean, aside from that, like, this car has 210,000 miles on it, and it was used as a daily for many years. I put over 100,000 miles on this RS2 spec conversion. It's got, the software is from Heinz Lehmann in Germany, stage 3 plus. You probably heard the story about, I had to go to Joe Hoppen to get the tune for this thing back in the day. But for the most part, this thing has been pretty bulletproof. I'm trying to think if I've had any real engine concerns with this. The typical stuff that you see on these, like misfires at high boost. I mean, that was the most common thing, and that's a boost leak, or that was historically an ignition coil issue, especially back in the days when you're running stock coils. In this car, I ran stock coils on forever because, frankly, the stock coil with the stock Bosch F5 DPOR plugs was just a great combination. Like, these cars just ran really well with that setup, and I reluctantly, they're not as convenient to troubleshoot, and obviously harder to get, more expensive. I mean, the cost per coil is you buy 2 coils, you bought the whole set here, more or less. So it just made sense to, we've now converted all of the cars over to the EFI LS coil conversion, and that is simply for reliability and long-term parts availability. I mean, there's nothing more available here in the States anyway than like a GM ignition coil. So that actually has been working well on everything. But with that said, I have an issue with this car, and it's an issue that I've been chasing for several years now. And essentially what's going on is the car ends up going into this kind of funk or cycle where it will run like full rich. It just ends up pegging my air fuel gauge, and it will be cutting out, just kind of stumbling. It's just getting too much fuel, and it kind of misfires a bit, and it's not fun, and if you're in traffic, like crawling in traffic, a slow traffic or something, it may stall because it's just kind of stumbling. So that has been something that I've kind of chased here and there, and I've gone through the boost leak checks, I've compression tested, I've done new plugs, kind of. And the trouble is these cars are old, so the info you get from, say, a VCDS scan is a little bit more rudimentary than an OBD2 car, obviously. And so obviously when you're running rich, that's going to throw an O2 sensor code. I'm trying to think of what else I would get, like a mass airflow or something. In fact, I just recently ran one the other day, and when it started doing this, and I I very quickly ran and grabbed the VCDS and hooked it up, and I'll show you it. We're going to go through that again here in this video, but I hooked it up, and I kid you not, as soon as I plugged the car in to scan it to try to do some live, look at the measuring blocks for like the O2 sensor and MAF, etc., it went on its best behavior. It started running just fine. no issues whatsoever. Now I do have a little video clip of, I'll insert here. Running dumpy and spitting juice out the tail. Essentially what it does, it just loads up and it starts kind of spitting out the tailpipe and just running cruddy, and it's really frustrating. And even more so is I need to take this car to my storage garage, which is not here. It needs to drive a couple hundred, 2 hours away. And my Pearl car is there, and I will occasionally drive that one in the winter. I don't know if it will see much use. Like last winter, it barely saw any. And I don't really take it out if it's salty sloppy. I've got an old car, the 96 A6 that does great for that, although there's more on that later. So it is imperative that I get this thing at least drivable safely down to my garage. Yeah, and in the past, it's funny because like I said, I've chased this issue for a while, and like fuel pump, I've got a Bosch 044, genuine fuel pump that seems to be doing fine. Did check the flow on that at one point. Trying to think of what else. Like fuel pump is relayed. Yeah, there's been a long list. Cleaned the engine grounds. Grounds and electricals can be sensitive, so went through all of that. I think I did the fuel pump relay update. I'm going to double check that, because with so many cars, sometimes you kind of lose track of what you've done to this or that. So I'm going to put an eyeball on that and see. But beyond that, my worry is that it's maybe the MAF. And this car, of course, has the RS2 MAF. Well, if you want to take a minute and have some fun, go Google that. And I'll put the part number on the screen here if I think of it, so you can take a look. But it is basically it's used on the Audi RS2, it's used on the Porsche 968, it's used on the Porsche 944 Turbo. I can't remember if there's anything else. Those are like the big three that come to mind. And it hasn't been, I don't think it's been in production since 2011, maybe earlier. So finding one of those is virtually impossible. If you look on eBay, currently there is a new old stock one from 2 Bennett for $2,500. And, I love 2 Bennett and what they do, and good guys. Like, met them in Monterey back in '99, so, or I should say good guy. Unfortunately, one of them has passed, but they are never shy about pricing things. Let's just leave it there. And not to say, maybe somebody will step up, and I'm sure it's going to be from the Porsche crowd, because I don't know if there's any Audi owner insane enough to do that, short of maybe Doug DeMuro, for an RS2 Avant or something. If he still has that, I don't know. But it doesn't make sense for someone like me, a mere peasant with an UrS4 with this MAF, to drop that kind of coin on a new old stock one. In fact, I'm just sort of scratching my head here, because the storage garage where I keep this car in the winter has a bunch of old parts. And if you're an old school Audi nut and you've been around a while and followed S-CARS.org for years, you might remember I used to have an online store called Parts Direct. And it got me thinking. I can remember maybe 10 years ago, maybe longer now, I actually had a new old stock like RS2 intake manifold. I had a Sport Quattro Turbo. There were a few leftover imported parts that were still hanging out in shelves there. And so I had found some new homes for those, but I'm trying to think. I might possibly have, fingers crossed, I might have an RS2 MAF. I think I might still have a fuel pressure regulator in there somewhere too. So I need to go dig through and really need to, figure out what I have and where. But that's the greatest challenge. I need to just not work for several weeks and try to organize and catalog, and that would be a terrible vacation. So naturally, it hasn't really happened. I've just got stuff everywhere in the world's smallest, most cluttered garage. So there you have it. Anyhow, we're going to start this up, and we're going to see, first of all, if it will do it on camera, because that's an even bigger ask. And then we're going to see if I can catch this, or, I did clear the codes last time, so we're going to see what comes back. I'm sure it's going to be the O2 sensor. I do have a new O2 sensor I think I'm going to throw in there just for some peace of mind, but I don't think that's the culprit here, and I fear it's the MAF maybe, but I got to see if I have a spare MAF. And technically you can run the stock UrS4 MAF and the RS2 MAF are interchangeable. They just have different screen styles. So the RS2 has kind of a honeycomb, whereas the UrS4 UrS6 has a metal screen. So not the end of the world if I had to switch over to one of those, but it's kind of nice to have all the factory spec stuff that you initially built the car with, if possible. So the next thing is, I think there's a place in Colorado, and no affiliation obviously, but it's called like Injection Masters or something, that I've seen may rebuild these mass airflow sensors. So I may in fact send the RS2 MAF out to them this winter and get that redone while the car is in limbo. I'm also thinking about sending out the RS2 injectors and having them gone through again, because like I said, they've got 110,000 miles on them at this point. So a little bit of preventative or freshening is probably not a bad thing. So anyhow, without further ado, I know I've been talking for way too long, and we're going to start this thing up and see what it does. And I also want to show you here, just before we get going, I'm using an older cable. If you can find these on eBay or secondhand, obviously the K2 USB will do the trick for these cars. It will, I think, do everything up through 2004. So I use it like my son's, we got the 04 A6S line. It works on that, works on my S8. And then for the old school cars, you need an adapter like this. So you can see that's got a plug in for the OBD2 style, and then it goes out to our classic connectors here, which are located in the corner of the fuse box. And you may have seen I did a video many years ago about checking your check engine codes using a paper clip, and you can of course do that technique. You can jumper these two ports and follow that instruction. But that is obviously even more basic. It's a good roadside trick if you want to I keep a paper clip in my door pocket just in case. But today we're going to plug in VCDS and do it, professionally. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to get that hooked up, and then we're going to fire this thing up. So because this car has been running rich and kind of frumpy as of late, I'm going to start by pull the coil cover, and I'm going to pull the wires and plugs out here, and also remove these coils because I need to get at the O2 sensor wiring and replace that. So I'm going to go ahead and start pulling some of that out. We're going to pull the plugs out, see what they look like, probably clean them up a little bit, and throw them back in. So we've got our O2 sensor nearly liberated here. I just had it kind of zip tied in a few places, but it's actually buried underneath this at the moment, but wire comes over here and essentially plugs into the first spot right here. So you just unplug that, slide this out of here. So I'm going to go ahead and get the old one out of here and then clean all this up again, get that back together, and then we're going to pull the plugs out. Ready for something scary? Get that to focus, but that is that's my O2 sensor. That's pretty rich. And I'm gonna guess there might be some of you that are totally new to these things that are wondering how you get that O2 sensor out of there. I mean, obviously it's pretty easy to see and pretty easy to reach. I'm just using a special O2 sensor tool here, but in a pinch, if you don't have that and it's really stuck, I would say take the air box out. There's the, disconnect this here. There's 3 clips that hold it in. Lift that whole assembly out of here, including this. It'll take that shield out, and then you have all kinds of room from this angle to get a big wrench on that thing, and no problem. I've never really had one that fought me too hard on these, so hopefully you have similar luck if you ever have to do this. And plug number 1 is indeed a bit on the dark side here. And these are the NGK, you can see them right here, BKR7EIX, so the iridiums. And I run these, and this car seems to traditionally be pretty good. Do not like the triple electrode plugs for whatever reason, at least not on my car. They've never worked with a crap for very long. These, I've had probably the best luck. I run the non-iridium version of these in my Pearl car, and they do just fine. You just have to replace them more often. But this red car, I tried these, and for the most part, they've been good until, this issue. But it's not the plug's fault. So anyhow, number 2 plug. Number 2, okay. This one is interesting. It also looks like a little bit of fuel maybe at the top of the threads here. Also kind of wondering about my injectors at this point. So maybe we'll fast track a rebuild on injectors while we're at it. But again, gonna clean this one up, put it back in. Number 3 is also a bit darker than it should be. Once again, clean up, throw it back in. Number 4 is definitely, I think, a little worse. It's a little bit damp with fuel, I think, and a little darker. So 2 and 4 so far not looking as good as the others. All right, as you can see, I've got this buttoned back up, and now I'm going to plug in VCDS. And I'm going to see if it just happens to do it again. Maybe we got lucky and it was just O2 sensor issue, but like I said, I'm still thinking it might be that. Just if you're curious and you want the plug-and-play O2 sensor, it is a Bosch 13957, or the 0258003-957. So this one basically will plug right into the factory plug and ground. So easy, very easy to just hook it up, zip tie it, and away you go. All right, I now have the car hooked up. You can see the adapter cable here plugging into the VCDS K2 USB adapter and back into the laptop. And I'm currently just running an auto scan, so we're gonna go through everything and figure out what I've got stored for codes. We're gonna clear it, and then we're gonna see if it starts acting up as the temp comes up in the car here. So I do have a couple of persistent ones here, just HVAC related. So I've got the temp sensor in the headliner, coolant temp sensor open. Okay, so I gotta look into that one. And then the potentiometer, positioning motor. I've replaced those in the past, so it's a bit annoying. I actually bought new expensive Audi ones at the time and have replaced those, so I think it's failed. It's maybe 15 years. It might just be a case of getting it out and moving it a bit, because I found in the past I've opened some up and they've been a little crunchy inside. You gotta clean them out and re-grease them. And I think there might have been a, I don't know, I either did a post about that on S-CARS.ORG a while, many years ago, or did a short video about it. I can't remember at this point, but not super worried about that right now, but we're gonna keep looking here. On the engine side of things, the car is now basically up to temp. It's been running stable the whole time, and I have not had that O2 sensor code come back yet. Now, I can't possibly be that lucky, but we're just gonna kind of keep watching this, and I'm gonna give it a little bit of throttle, because that sometimes will trip it up and send it into the hizzy. Well, just give it throttle. It's still stable, running pretty much as it does. up, it'll park itself all the way on the right side on the floor of the right side, and it'll just load up, and like you saw earlier in the video. So that is actually looking good right there. Our temps getting there, like we're decent. So my main concern was, I did actually look back, and it occurs to me the battery is now 5 years old in this car, and it does sit more than it drives. In fact, I probably I'll maybe put 500 miles on it this year. And it sits on a battery tender, but I know these cars historically are very sensitive to battery voltage issues, especially this one, for optimal performance. So I may need to do a load test on the battery just to see how that's holding up. But it's probably getting to be about time to replace that as well. So anyhow, I can't get it to act up right now, and a brief rain shower coming in, so I'm not going to go drive this at the moment, because the only time it gets wet is when it gets washed, and I don't have time to clean it up again. So I am going to call this one to be continued. Maybe it's solved as simply as an O2 sensor, and I'm going to look into that coolant temp sensor. But yeah, that's, sometimes the fun of these cars is because they are pre-OBD2, you've got a little bit less to go on in terms of the computer telling you what's wrong, and more of your own troubleshooting and trying things to figure it out. But I have, like I said in the past, I've done a really good boost leak check on this thing. I don't seem to have any boost leaks. When it does run well, like it still peaks at 28.5 psi of boost, and has been pulling strong and healthy. But every once in a while, like I said, it would go into that funk. So once again, thanks for watching. I know this wasn't the most exciting video. Had hoped to actually catch a smoking gun here, and thought maybe, I actually honestly thought it was the mass airflow sensor that was perhaps causing all this. And like I said, I went down the rabbit hole trying to find a potential rebuilder. I'm still thinking it's a good idea to actually send that off to have it recalibrated, because over time, from what I've been reading everywhere else, like the readings can get off considerably as the cars age, and many years. So I would not doubt it at all if that RS2 MAF is now currently, well, it's 25, it's been in use for 25 years and 110,000 miles. So it is probably time, which makes me think that it's probably time to do it on all the cars. So yeah, should get some sort of affiliate commission, I think, with this company in Colorado. But anyhow, thank you for watching, and I will see you soon with something else. Cheers. But wait, there's more. I just was ready to shut this down and call it good, and all of a sudden we are running dumpy. And I did have an O2 sensor fault code pop up again, which I just re-cleared, but it's probably gonna be back. No, not yet. Interesting. Still no fault code. See a little hesitation there. And now it kind of feels like it went back to normal. I think it did. Yeah, I'm not rich anymore. Oh, what the heck. Although, it's not totally normal, I can tell you that right now, because right there. So the air, it's not parked on the floor, but it's definitely stuck in the rich mode right now. So that's what's going on with this car. That's been driving me nuts. And right now it's, of course, well, it's happier. Nope, there's the hesitation. As I just, yeah. running dumpy. Yep, now it's back in the funk. My gauge is still where it was. I can't remember lambda factors. Curious. Still no fault code there. That's interesting. Oh yeah, I can tell just by the smell. It's flammable in here. Okay, so I'm not going to keep this running because I don't want to foul out my plugs. But that is what I'm dealing with. And so obviously I'm back to that mass airflow factor, I think. And yeah. So anybody out there smarter than me, and that's probably all of you, if you have other ideas and maybe revisit this perhaps quickly or perhaps in an upcoming video. So anyhow, thank you once again for watching. I'll see you next time.